What's up? And welcome back, everybody. I'm Ash, and this is the Embodied Mind podcast. As usual, I'm here with my partner in crime, Prince Bell, and this is where we're gonna hang out for about an hour, talk about things that are of interest to us. And Prince, you're busy burning your lunch in your instant pot. I want you to tell me more about those instant pots because my wife has been kind of wanting to get one. And I've been kind of thinking about it just because I thought it'd be good for making bone broth in. But I'm not 100% convinced on it yet. But she did there's been some recipes or whatever that she showed me that they look pretty good. So how do you what? They're like about $100.
Yeah, there's different ones. If you because I have the one I wanted it that does everything, yogurt, everything. If I hadn't gotten
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one, then yeah,
that's the one. That's what I want too.
okay. Yeah, the one that I think you can make yogurt in the other. There's like one because what's his name? Chi Liang uh Ho, the Ely Chin, he's a Ely Chin guy. I think in San Francisco. Like he offered to get me one. And he was like, anyone you want, just let me know and pay it forward. But I was like, I didn't tell him. I was like, well, I've already kind of got one. And I didn't say anything. I was just like, thanks, man, thanks. But at that time I was looking at the one that was like $80 and it doesn't do yogurt. And I wanted the one that does yogurt. And the funny thing is I still haven't made yogurt. And actually, while I'm on that topic, that's how I had my first conversation with Ying, was she was making yogurt in her Instant Pot. She posted on Instagram and I was like, oh, I want to try that. Because I didn't know what else to say, because I was like, this girl is never going to talk to me because
Right.
everybody's probably messaging her. And,
Yeah, I'm
we'll
sure
see what.
she's getting a lot of them DMs.
Yeah. Yeah. She gets a lot. But
Um,
yeah, if you use a crock pot a lot, then the Instant Pot makes sense, because a lot of stuff that like the fancy crock pots did, that I just had a cheap one. I was like, man, I need to get a fancier crock pot. And then I started seeing all the stuff the Instant Pot does. And I'm like, well, that does everything the fancy crock pots do, and then some, and it does it faster. So if I were to start back eating meat, I would probably get a lot more use out of my Instant Pot, because there's so many dishes that I knew how to make in my crock pot. I mean, I even know how to cook ribs in my crock pot that tasted good. I used to do that when I had my gym, was while I was training in my studio gym, I would have like a rack of ribs in my crock pot, and I would start them up at like during my the second morning workout, and then by the evening, after everybody had cleared out and I cleaned up, then I just go in the back and throw down on some ribs. So I
right.
think the Instant Pot would do it a whole lot faster than having ribs going all day.
Right. Well, and then because we bought like a pork shoulder,
Mhm.
man, because it was a crazy price on a pork shoulder. It was like 9 pounds, and I don't know why, I can't if it was like close to the date or whatever, but the sell by date, but it was like $5 for 9 pounds of pork shoulder. So I cut it up into three, like 3 pound pieces, cooked up one in the slow cooker all day, and it ended up coming out pretty good. It was like, we let it cook for about 6 or 8 hours. It was like super tender. And I still got the other 6 pounds yet to cook up sitting in the freezer. But,
Yeah.
I think we use we do probably use the slow cooker like at least usually like once a week. Either like I'm making um, uh, uh, like bone broth, or but I was kind of interested in the instant pot because since it like you said, it's kind of like a combination slow cooker pressure cooker, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
it's both. So
yeah,
yeah.
well, that's what I was thinking because like the pressure cooker aspect would help extract like more nutrients from the bones, and usually like when I'm especially like when I'm making bone broth, like I'll
Hmm.
let them sit in the slow cooker for like 2 days. So it's kind of taking up like a lot of space on the countertop, and pumping out some heat into the kitchen for two
Yeah.
whole days.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, maybe, it's like if the Instant Pot works pretty good, and my wife has been looking at them anyway because she been seeing like a bunch of recipes that she wanted to try like come up in her Facebook newsfeed or whatever. And so when you were just right now like getting your lunch going or whatever, I thought, oh, it'd be a good opportunity to ask you like if you're happy, with the product because and if I had it, like I said, like doing yogurt is another thing that I would want to do, or at some point when my schedule frees up a little bit, I want to start trying to experiment with making my own cheese
Hmm.
and so some stuff like that. But it's like right now I already do. I got like a batch of. I did a whole big batch of sauerkraut. Dang it! And that reminds me, I forgot to get cabbage when we were uh, getting groceries yesterday because I'm due to get another batch started. But yeah, so as I get the time, I try to bring, make a lot of these like, probiotic foods, like traditional probiotic foods myself, and that because I was actually pleasantly amazed at how well our first big batch of sauerkraut came out. We like as a family, like we crushed it, and I don't know. I think like we basically, like a quart-sized jar, and we'll sit down and eat it in one or two sittings, like with like different meals or whatever. And it's great for your gut health too. So, and Whole Foods charges like $5 for like a pound,
Yeah.
and for $6 worth of cabbage, once you invest in a jar big enough, um, you can make what basically I think it was 6 pounds of sauerkraut I made up for $6 compared to the little container like this that they'll sell you at Whole Foods for $6.
Hmm.
So um so yeah, so on this in this week's episode we have a couple of interesting things on the docket for you, and I one of these is going to be right up your area, Prince. I'm sure that you've already got experience with the pranayama technique called Nadi Shodhan pranayama, which is the alternate nostril breathing. I found an interesting study that came to me via the Power Speed Endurance guys, the Art of Breath guys that I went in to do their exposure workshop 2 weeks ago that we talked about. And also, I thought that we would talk about just like topically, uh, what is mindfulness? Um, so in the because actually what came up with why I thought it would be good to talk about for this week's episode was in the precision nutrition coaching Facebook group. There was I don't know if you caught it. You should be in that group, right?
No, I'm not in the group. I
Oh, really?
should join
Okay,
it,
yeah,
but I
because it's
gotta.
for students. It's for current students and graduates. So it's alumni and current students. But so there was like a big to do about mindful eating. Basically, was the specific topic, and there was as I was reading through like a lot of the comments and replies, I was like, man, some of these people don't have any idea what mindfulness is supposed to actually, what it really is. And so like there was one guy who was saying like, "Oh, I should have pulled up his comments just so I could read like the one section of it." But he was like, "Oh, it's impossible for me to only focus on the food that I'm eating and be mindful and eat mindfully." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" That's like that's the opposite of so. And so we were talking back and forth about uh and this, there was like really convinced that you couldn't focus on like just on eating and be mindful.
What the?
And so, it
That's
kind
the
of
whole
made
point.
me right. And so, but it kind of made me realize that
Oh, I got a stomach cramp. Oh, oh, some people, man. Oh Lord.
so I thought, okay, you know what? That's fair. Maybe we should not make assumptions that everybody automatically understand, that because it's a word that gets thrown around a lot these days. And so like everybody, or not everybody, but I use everybody as a general, there's potential for a lot of like misunderstanding about like what mindfulness actually what it is or what it could mean. But actually, because the thing of it is that I actually don't like that
Term.
term
Yeah.
because so many people use it. And so, as part of the conversation that we were having, was like that was one of the things that came up was like this guy's point was, well, everyone has their own definition of like what mindfulness means. And I was like, hey, yeah, you know what? I agree with you. You're right. And that's why I don't like that word really, because it just kind of becomes like it's a junk phrase, whereas like you said, it means something different to everybody, so then it doesn't end up meaning anything at all. Um, so I thought, it's been a while, so we've been talking a lot over the last couple episodes about like nutrition and training and some of that kind of stuff. So I kind of thought this was a good opportunity to kind of bring the focus back to some of the other things that we like to talk about on this podcast, which is again is like the role of the mind and meditation and how that affects us. So that way, if this is somebody's first exposure to like the concept of mindfulness, or if they're looking you know for maybe a more helpful definition, that like this episode could be a good opportunity to kind of help people get pointed on the right track. So for me, because I like to look at um, we can use like some different words. So we can use like different words like attention, and we can use words like concentration, and we can use words like awareness, right? So I think that based on my experience with mindfulness meditation and through martial arts through Ili Chuan, I like these three English words better. So in like in the classical like Pali texts and stuff, they would talk about like the sati, and then would be like vipassana. So like sati is more like concentration, right? So no matter what, you need to use attention, right? So then, uh, but then concentration becomes the skill of holding your attention on the object, right? So like every object of there's object, subject, and consciousness, right? But the attention is the thing that is actually observing, or where you like your target, right? You're where you establish like a point of contact with something, and it could be like eye contact, ear contact, could be, it's like some kind of sense contact. And that's like the attention. And then, but the concentration is the skill of holding your attention on the object, because everyone has attention, right? There's nobody that doesn't have attention. It's just it's the skill of holding the attention long enough on your object to be able to get like some kind of like clarity, right? Of observation. And so that's where, like when so like a lot of times I think when people are using mindfulness in a general sense is when I would use the word like awareness. It's like, because like when you have like that kind of like uh global attention, you is like more of awareness, because there's not really like, 'cause deep concentration, when you pursue like meditation to that level of like getting a deep concentration where you're only focusing on one thing, either like the breath or whatever your object is, it's like, they call it one pointedness. It's like you get down to where the only thing that exists in your attention is like that object of meditation. Like the other senses get more distant or like fall away. Um, and then, but when like, that's why, so for instance, like, Venerable Jiru, he likes to teach, the walking meditation to lay practitioners more, like regular people. Um, because the walking meditation is more like global, is more dynamic. Like you can't have like a single point of focus or you fall over, right? And so I think when in general when people are using kind of the term mindfulness is about this. Do you take your GABA again?
Mm-mm.
Ugh. Yeah, you got me. Now you got me doing it. But yeah, and then uh, but you need to be able to hold your attention, your concentration, in the present moment long enough to be able to like, have insight, right? Or like aware, understanding. You can say wisdom, like understanding. And this is like the ultimate goal of, at least the kind of mindfulness training that I practice, or like the through the Zen meditation or whatever. The ultimate goal is to break through, to have like this kind of understanding. But that's my that's kind of how I would explain it or look at it. What is your take?
Um, well, it's like you said, mindfulness is just paying attention. So that's why I was laughing. Like the guy's like, I'm way too focused on what I'm eating to be mindful of to be mindful. And it's like, well, that's the whole point. You're supposed to be paying attention to what you're eating. So in my tantric yoga practice, one of the early lessons was actually like the mindfulness of eating. In Tantra, that word literally means mindfulness. Like I know it's easier because sex sells. It's easier to associate tantric yoga with sex practices, but tantric yoga literally it means mindfulness yoga, mindfulness practice, right? So like Teo had me do this lesson, and it literally was like when you pick up the food, like how does the texture feel in your hands? How does it smell? And I got mad at him because I'm like, dude, man, like you got me doing this 30-minute mindfulness practice. I just want to eat the food. Like I don't I'm hungry. I just want to eat. I'm aware that I'm hungry and I want to eat this food, and that's it. But I feel like Gary Vaynerchuk talked about this on an interview he did last year. He said that mindfulness is going to be the next big thing. That's gonna. He's like in about 5 years, 10 years from everybody's going to be talking about mindfulness. It's going to be the next big product that people are trying to sell. And I'm like, well, with all the people I know, that's awesome. But then it's like, but then you got all these marketing experts who might not know anything, and they're the ones who might get out in front and get all the money, where the people who actually have some kind of expertise, it's always, it's like some people say, oh, well, if you got great marketing, but your product sucks, then you're just going to have everybody know that your product sucks. Yeah, but everybody knows that to go to that person first, right? You can have a sucky product, but be, a millionaire. And the
Right.
people that have it good, yeah, because they're the
First
first to
in,
market.
yeah, first to market and top of mind.
Yeah. So I worry about that, but, at the same time, I think it's about making people very clear on what it is they're actually looking for. Because, in the group, I guess somebody said, well, everybody's got their own definition of mindfulness. That's nice and good. Everybody's got their own definition of what it means to be enlightened. But
Right.
you can define enlightenment however you want. It doesn't mean you're there. Just
Right.
because you define it some way, it doesn't mean, I can say, oh, well, to be the next Michael Jordan, I can define that LeBron James is the next Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan. The next Michael
Right.
Jordan is Michael Jordan in the next moment. That's who the next Michael Jordan. Doesn't matter how we define it. What is what is, right? So I think it's crazy that everybody it's become this buzzword, and everybody's made it whatever they want to make it, and it's like, okay, that's fine and dandy. You can put cherries in a pie. It doesn't make it an apple pie just because you call it an apple pie. Apple pie
Right.
is apple pie. Mindfulness is
Right.
mindfulness, and people need to be clear on what it actually is, or what they're pursuing at least.
Right. Well, I think, that's one of the things where it's like, I don't know, everyone feels like they're entitled to their own definition of, what something is or it isn't. And it's like, well, it's like there's limits on everything, right?
Yeah.
It's like, especially like from martial arts, that we talk about like form and formlessness, right? It's
Mhm.
like the things that are form, it's like they have a formation, is like they have a limit. It's like that formation is fixed. It's like it in that moment it is something. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's where you know like where I think probably to your point about like Michael Jordan and LeBron James, it's like context is everything, right? Like
Mhm.
context sets the at least in part like the parameters of what something is or isn't, and it's like the one of those parameters in like let's say like we're talking about Michael Jordan is that it was he was Michael Jordan at his time, right? And it was like the time and place of like the other conditions that were going on around. That's getting a little bit off topic, but the point is that like so like Sifu uh Sam Chin, he says like knowing the difference is not judging,
Mhm.
but uh you have to know the difference.
Yeah.
Like you have to have like the separation to get the clarity. Um, and because I think like there's a kind of like different factors that play into like people's ego,
Mm,
that factor into it. I mean, really, it just comes down to ego. Like I said, it's like everybody feels like they're entitled to their own definition, because like if they're wrong, then that is bad, or it's like if I'm right and you're wrong, or vice versa, then one of us is better than the other. But it's like, like you said, is that um, not every definition is correct. So it's like we
yeah.
kind of want to start from so like in Buddhism they talk about like right understanding and right like inspiration. It's like you gotta start out like knowing you know what you're talking about, and you gotta know like what direction you're going and why you're going in that direction. So, and I think for me, that's one of the things where like Gary Vaynerchuk or whatever talking about it, and because a lot of mindfulness or whatever has become, it's already for a while been like a hit topic or whatever, and it's like, a lot of people in like the business world, and a business has been like kind of quick to like latch on to, the concept because they think that it's going to make their employees like more productive and be able to like handle like crappy working conditions, for longer hours. Like, oh, but we're mindful, so we're not, you know, or to be able to kind of it's kind of become like very sort of twisted in a sense, where it's like there's a lot of selfishness involved around like the current trend in mindfulness. It's all about me. It's all about how, how I can improve my life through mindfulness and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, that's not really what it's about per se, and especially it has a more, uh, there should be a more selfless quality,
Yeah.
ideally behind your, again, like starting out with the right, like you say, the right inspiration. Uh,
Yeah, it's getting mixed in with uh I'm trying to think of what the movement's called. Like one is the New Thought movement, and it's weird because it all comes out of like it's weird that this they're co-opting this from Buddhism, and that movement comes out of prosperity, like prosperity preaching in like Christianity, and that came from the New Thought is what is the New Thought movement is what it's turned into, but it started in the 19th century. I'm trying to think of what the group called, but it's basically like the power of positive thinking, like the secret, all that kind of stuff comes from it's like an old lady that started all of this. And those thoughts, and I'm sure maybe it goes back even further, but it's like, oh well, be mindful of what you truly want and focus on your goals, and the universe will provide it for you. And I'm like, no, I mean maybe that happens, like you know, there's it's in the Bible. Allegedly, Buddha said it too. As a person thinks, what they think about that becomes their reality. And I just always thought about, well, whatever you focus on, that is what you focus on. So it literally is your reality. My life sucks. This is bad. This is bad. This is bad. Well, that's all you see. That's all you focus on. So that actually is your reality.
right. Yeah, because you miss the other things.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, I mean, that's why, like I said, that's kind of the beef that I have with like how, the direction of like the mindfulness movement, especially like in Silicon Valley or whatever, and like in the business community where it's like, uh, I don't know, I guess, like I said, it's tainted with this, like impure motivations, right? There's like that sense of, I don't know, like from meditation, like we would talk about like sense desire, right? So like they talk about the five hindrances of the mind, and one of the five hindrances is sense desire. And so that could be, for like nice clothes, good food, like artwork, or or even just being able to like physical experiences, like have a good vacation or like all that kind of stuff. Like all that kind of falls under the banner of like sense desire. And
Potty
so,
a
like I said,
beach.
say what now?
Potty a beach.
I'm missing something.
I've been watching all these videos about Potty a beach in Thailand. It's like
Oh,
I want
poly.
to,
Okay, yeah,
yeah, I want to go.
right. So, I mean, it's like as human beings, it's normal for us to like have these kind of feelings, I guess. And but the point about the training is to uh, not to like get yourself to the point where you can be rich and have like vacations and all that kind of stuff. The point of the training, I mean, if that stuff comes, it's fine. It's a tool, right? And you use it. But again, it's not like it shouldn't be like the inspiration behind, like your whole practice, right? Like I said, it's already starting off kind of like in the wrong, a little bit starting off in the wrong direction. I mean, even if you're, uh, you know, like I said, you're pursuing the training, like from a secular point of view, it's like you just want something like as a skill. It's at a certain point, like those things will hold you back, from like really being able to progress. Because a lot of that stuff it's about the three kind of feeling, right? Like you don't like, and like neutral or whatever. Not really neutral. It's like you don't know or whatever. And it's normal that we are all like under this sway of like what the stuff that we like and we enjoy, we want more of, and the stuff that we don't like and we want to reject, we don't want to experience that kind of stuff. And then the other stuff we kind of usually will like ignore or whatever. But I mean, the the whole training is about like learning to like uh match up to what is, right? It's like not what you want or what you don't want. I mean, that's mindfulness, right? So, uh, so yeah, so I don't know. Like I said, we'll see. Like you said, we'll see. Like I think you're right that it's going to be somebody with the slick marketing that like really like takes off with it, because like that kind of like that framework is pandering to people's ego and to their sense, their sense desire and all that kind of stuff. And so they're gonna, chase after that kind of branch, whereas like the other stuff is maybe not so much fun and it doesn't really make any promises uh, on the other end either.
Yeah.
And so it's like I think I know. I mean, I've heard probably more bad experiences coming out of like the Kundalini, but I have heard of like some people having like a psychotic break.
Yeah. Yeah.
from doing, well, from Kundalini, but also from doing like the Vipassana, like the 10-day Vipassana retreats. And so, I mean, even like I said, it's like the real stuff is not like super touchy-feely, and
No.
it doesn't necessarily always go like a good way. I don't know. Maybe you can talk about more about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, over on my Star Wars channel, you always have some person, and I just, you shouldn't prejudge, but whenever I have people, oh, Prince, I want to know a Sith meditation practice. And I'm like, okay, those are the bad guys. So you want to be a bad guy, right? And look at their faces. Like it's already something wrong with them, right? That they burst blood vessels in their eyes, and you want to look like that. You want to be that. So you're already letting me know that you're not all there upstairs. Um, uh, it's fun. Kelly talked about like on one of his old videos, like the path to power and people who get into these kind of practices seeking power, they get messed up, like because they're just trying to fulfill some ego need. And that happens when people start dealing with Kundalini practices, you start to kick up stuff. A lot of Christian mysticism talks about the darkest night of the soul. I think that's what happens when people have psychotic breakdowns at Vipassana retreats. Um, you start basically dealing with a lot of mess, and some people have more than others. They might not be equipped to deal with it. All your, especially with Kundalini survivors, because we talked about this when I was at a workshop last year. Is it any insecurity that you have ever had at any point in your life? Your mind is going to throw it right in your face. And I was actually glad that because I was like, man, I like have been dealing with some of this stuff, and I thought it was just me, but everybody else here who has made it through the other side has dealt with it too. Some people have had more traumatic things, like Dr. Glenn Morris in his book Path Notes of an American Ninja Master had like these weird stuff that happened to him where I don't know if I should say it in a podcast, but something weird happened to him while he was watching porn. And it like ruined his marriage because it was like anything that had like intimacy, like he would get physically sick from whatever he did to his nervous system. He fried it for a few years, and then it's like you can't tell, even if your wife knows, oh, I do these weird martial arts and this crazy uh uh yoga stuff and some Taoism stuff, that I'm like creating this system on my own and don't really know what I'm doing. Uh and yeah, I can't have sex with you for a few years until I fix my, I mean, that's not gonna go. Maybe in some marriages that might go okay, fine, as long as you pay the
Right.
bills. but I know from my previous relationships that like my ex-fiance, hey man, if I didn't touch her a certain kind of way after a week, she was ready to kick me out. So those kind of things, man, it's rough, like physically, mentally. You push yourself on every level of existence that I know of. And the people who sell this stuff, or especially like the YouTube, I used to watch all the YouTube people that are selling Kundalini courses and whatnot. They make it sound like, oh, one guy, you probably already had your awakening and you just need to realize it. And I like that because it meshes with what Sifu says about it's already there. But at the same time, it's like nobody wants to talk about the horrors. Nobody wants to talk about how difficult it is. Gopi Krishna started when he was what, like 17, 18, and then when he was almost 40, that's when it almost happened. And he had a very boring government job, and he had his wife who from his um, arranged marriage who took care of him. And it's like he did all of this for 20 years, and then when he finally had his awakening, which we're going to talk about later, from breathing through just one nostril for 20 years. He nearly killed himself because I guess he opened up one channel and didn't open up the other one. That, and he was a hypochondriac, so he almost killed himself just from stressing himself out. But nobody wants to talk about that. Like, it took him 20 years. And then after all of that, he almost died. And then it took probably another 10 years for his nervous system to rewire itself. And then it's like, okay, so 30 years, 20 years of practice, then you almost kill yourself. And then another 10 years to fix yourself. And oh, now he can write poems in all these languages he never learned. And uh, he did something to his eyes where like everything he looked at looked like it was made of crystal. And so like, and I think what's the he was one of Freud's guys, but he's written on all of like mystical stuff and supernatural experiences as part of his psychology. I can't think of his name. um yeah, I can't think of his name at all. uh I keep saying I can't think of his name, and then I try to think of it. But he had like interviewed this lady who later they think she may have had a Kundalini awakening, and she like walked into a brothel, and she was telling him about the brothel, but she didn't know it was a brothel. And she was like, all the people were beautiful and it looked like this and they were all sparkling. And it was like whatever her vision, the way she was describing it was the same way Gopi Krishna described his vision after he like rewired himself, that everything was just beautiful. And it's like people hear that part, but they don't want to hear the 30 years and almost dying that it took to get to that point, or this person has psychic powers and they can do math in their head and look at complex things. Or because that's what Gopi Krishna says, is like every genius is because of like they were born with some kind of Kundalini activity, or they did it without knowing it. That's why he calls it the evolutionary energy in humanity. But it's like, okay, even an Einstein had to work to get to that point, right? Even what's the guy that just passed away, that was like quadruple, well, he
Stephen
wasn't quadruple.
Hawking.
Yeah, even he had to do some kind of work to get to that point. Yeah, he was born just, his brain was firing on a frequency that most people aren't, but he had to develop that talent, even if it was Kundalini or DNA or just chance, or the universe wanted him to bump humanity up a couple of levels, right? Everybody's got to do the work, and all people want to talk about, oh, look how great it is, and oh, it's so easy. And no, it's not easy, man, because I mean, I accidentally awakened Kundalini, and shoot, man, there's been more times than I want to admit that I wanted to go to this bridge back here and take a nosedive off. And that's one of the reasons, like, I got to get out of my neighborhood. I got I got to go somewhere where I'm in a place where I know that I can complete this and be around supportive people, or at least be in an environment where I feel like, like people will appreciate it. Because here, the Bible Belt, it's getting more open, more accepting. But I'm like, hey man, let me go somewhere where I can go walk in a Hindu Buddhist temple and look at that and be like, yeah, that little statue that they drew, that's how I'm feeling right now. Let me hang out with this guy for a little bit.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the things about even like the Phoenix area here is that it's like kind of everybody is from somewhere else already, and they just kind of like want to do their own thing. So it's kind of hard to get like a group together, or like an organization going, or organization is not necessarily the right word, but to have like that kind of it's not like compared to like the Bay Area or something like that, where there's something of everything like everywhere. And so I don't know, we'll see, because it's actually uh I managed to be able to get it scheduled for the Venerable Jiru to be able to come out here and hold um a 3 day like meditation retreat in December. So we'll see. Hopefully, I can manage to like pull, people from the different groups together to kind of pursue some of this training, be able to make it happen on an ongoing basis. But yeah, I mean, just through my experience of being here has been one of the kind of just because the idea is kind of piggybacking off what you were saying about being around like a supportive, community or people that are supportive of like what you're trying to do, and it's like that makes, like that kind of community aspect of like all like any practice is important. I mean, that's why people gather, to go to church on Sunday or whatever. They have like their regular groups because there's like a different energy that kind of happens when, people like, so there was this one thing that I saw about the Sufi and like one of the ceremonies that they were doing, and they had kind of wired them all up to an EKG machine, and they went through their ceremony, and like the further they went through the ceremonies, like the more like their nervous systems became entrained. So it was like their heart rate and their breathing all changed to be like in sync with each other. And that kind of brings like a different feeling to your mind as well. It kind of like helps to tune the mind. And so yeah, so I appreciate like what you're saying about not having like a strong community around you, doing like what you're trying to do.
Yeah. On the thing where the with the Sufi where their kind of frequencies kind of started to fall into sync. This is going to be kind of one of those woo woo kind of out there things. But as part of like the CAP training, we had learned to like look at auras and stuff, and I could like see distortions around people, but not colors or any, and so I always looked at it as like maybe as far as a self-defense thing, if I can like start paying more attention to people, maybe I can kind of figure out their intentions or whatever. So this was like 2009, when like now I don't really do that thing anymore. But there was I went to, and this was when I was in seminary. So I was at a workshop on prayer, and the two facilitators, I like just got bored. Like whenever I get bored in seminary, that's what I was like, okay, I'm gonna drop into doing some weird cap stuff just because I'm bored. And I started paying attention to the two facilitators as they were like leading the prayer at the end of the workshop. And I noticed that, like, I don't know if it was aura, just a distortion that I noticed, or just something, but it like grew and then it like merged like around them. And I thought it was really cool that it, like you said, it something that I was noticing like fell into sync and it like merged. Now I'm not gonna say, oh, and then it turned rose red or it turned green because that's the heart color. Because I didn't see anything like that. And I'm not gonna say, oh yeah, I see auras and your aura's purple and that's your crown chakra. I just noticed like distortions around people. It could be something that my mind is doing. Maybe there really is something to it. I don't know, but I just thought it was cool that the longer they prayed, like as they were, it looked like something like they were projecting something. I don't, like I said, maybe it was just me being bored out of my mind.
Hallucinating,
Yeah, possibly. But hey, man, that's what makes it all fun.
right? So now, so with all that being said, though, obviously there is a lot of benefit to like these kind of practices, even at like I don't want to say like a low level, but like at a basic level, right? So it's like sometimes it's just like it's like that 80-20 rule, right? You get like 80% of the result from 20% of the time and effort. And so you know if you just want like to get like a piece of it just to help like improve your like day-to-day functioning, that's totally fine too. And so the research study that I mentioned earlier about the alternate nostril breathing, uh, title of the study is called Assessment of the Effects of Pranayama slash alternate nostril breathing on the parasympathetic nervous system in young adults. And so this study is one of them that shows like some of the basic like physiological benefits of just practicing at like a simple practice at a simple level. And so basically, one of the things that I liked about this study a lot, it's kind of a simple, like straightforward study. Um, but one of the things that I really liked about it was that they used kind of like healthy young males as the group. So actually, I guess probably one of the things was that they didn't show they didn't have like a control group. They just did like a before and after. Like they measured them like at their baseline, and then they measured them again at 6 weeks, and then again after a year. I think there was one more time that they measured them in there somewhere. But basically, so for instance, are you perhaps you can explain to everyone how to do alternate nostril breathing?
I've never done it.
Oh, really? Okay, I
Yeah.
thought maybe that would be part of your. I got a sneeze coming.
Bless you. It might be it might it's not part of cap. It might be part of the other. I got like 6 years worth of material, like literal. It's like laid out as like a school curriculum. So I'm like in the first grade, and sixth grade is like the final year. So so I got a lot. I got a lot of material that I got to find some way to get through. I'll be busy for a while whenever I finally start. But yeah, I don't. I'll have to ask Teo about that if we want to bring that up on a later, or if you want to have him on, because that dude knows everything about yoga, everything. Um, but after he told me about Gopi Krishna breathing through one nostril for 20 years and almost killing himself, I was like, yeah, I'm good with that. Unless I'm now you know what though? Robin, who is over Dr. Morris, is like the martial arts side of Hoshin Tao. He did talk to us about alternate nose breathing, but it wasn't like it was like he said if it was almost like a yin yang thing. Like if you're too yin and you breathe through one nostril, if you're too yang, you do another one. But he meant as far as like a train, like before you get ready to start training. Like
Right.
if you're very I don't know, passive, then you do this to get more aggressive, and vice versa. If you need to calm yourself down, you do this one before you start practicing with partners so you don't hurt your partner. So I
Well,
guess I have, I guess I
that,
have done it.
that was one of the things that what I thought was interesting from the study was that they were mentioning about how I'm sure through like a functional MRI or whatever, but that if you breathe it, the nostrils are like the eyes,
Mm.
and that they have a contralateral relationship with the brain. So like if you breathe through the left side, if you only breathe through the left nostril, it creates more activity in the right hemisphere of the brain. And if you breathe through the right side, it creates more activity in the left hemisphere of the brain. But the specific method that they used in here was this alternate breathing. And my mouse was acting up. It's called Nadi Shodhan Pranayama in uh, Hindu. And so on that one, basically, like you'll inhale like through the right side, and after you're done inhaling, then you switch, like like plug up the left side, inhale through the right nostril, then plug the right nostril and exhale through the left, and then inhale again through the left, and then switch back to the right to exhale. So like at the end of every inhale, like you inhale through one side and then switch to the other side. Exhale, inhale, switch back to the other side. So that was the method that they used in this study. And so it wasn't just only breathing like through one side. And so basically what they did was they measured their heart rate variability. And so, you know, if you, anybody that's ever like kind of, mm, I mean, I already knew this just from like my own experience, like in my own body or whatever, but that like if you, as you inhale, heart rate speeds up. As you exhale, heart rate slows down. So it's like this difference between the inhale and the exhale, in part, is your heart rate variability. And the more variability that you have there is kind of like an overall sign of like your physiological state. So if you have, if you have good heart rate variability, you're more in a parasympathetic state, which is like your state of rest and digest. And if you have poor heart rate variability, then you're in more of like a sympathetic state, which is like your fight or flight state. And you're not supposed to be like in this hyperactive state of arousal like all the time. I mean, that's where people's like adrenals get burned out and they start like their cortisol levels are jacked all the time. And so then they start to like gain weight and they can't sleep. And then that creates like that negative feedback loop of, like, and you don't get enough sleep. So then your cortisol level goes up and then you get more stressed out and then your cortisol level goes up and then you don't sleep and then you don't sleep. So your cortisol level goes up. And then, so like people, then you start to have like, like this negative metabolic cascade. And so we actually have our listener, Koyos, says that it sounds like something that his mom is going through right now. And it's common, actually. It's probably more people are experiencing this kind of like a constant state of arousal and stress response, like at a low grade kind of level, but then it starts to um, feed into itself. And so, for instance, Dr. Sachin Panda at his lab, he's done like a lot of research with like the circadian rhythm and sleep and the effect of sleep on metabolism and disease, basically. And so it's like once you start to like get out of sync, like on that cycle, that's when you start to see like a lot of metabolic disorders start to happen, and you start to see like a lot of these other disease states start to manifest. So, Koyos, what I might recommend is that you have your mom. She could try out this alternate nostril breathing, or another one is just going to be to do like the 1 to 2 cadence breathing. So, like you would say, let's just say to make it easy, inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 8 seconds. That's going to be like the time there would depend on like whatever um, is comfortable for you. It's like you don't want to force, you don't want to over breathe and like over oxygenate your blood. That's just going to like speed up your heart rate too and kind of put you into a state of arousal. And you don't want to like force the exhale too much either, because that's also, you're going to build up too much CO2 and for like whatever your tolerance is. And then again, that's going to put you into like a stress state. So the idea, like the magic word is comfortable. And, but yeah, so that's what they did with these guys was that they took 25 healthy young males around the age of 19, was like the average age. Oh. And then they taught them. Well, first they measured like their baseline, and then they taught them this alternate nostril breathing, and they tested them. I think after just like 5 minutes of practice, and then after following a training period of 6 weeks. But then they followed up with them like 4 times over the course of a year. and they measured their heart rate variability. Basically, what they described as their parasympathetic parameters were reassessed after 6 weeks of the alternate nostril breathing. And they tested them both lying down and standing up. So in the study, they were talking about it as their orthostatic tolerance test. So just like an orthostatic position is basically like an upright posture. So they measured their heart rate variability both like laying down and standing up, and they found uh, that especially after like a full year of practice, this alternate nostril breathing for 15 minutes a day was the practice period. Um, that there was significant improvements in their heart rate variability. So, and basically meaning that they went back into a parasympathetic state, which is, like I said, is a, if you're a competitive athlete, like during the game time, you want to be in a state of arousal. If you're uh, military, when you are in combat, you want to be in a state of arousal. Uh, but outside of that, we don't want to be in that state of arousal. We want to be like in this kind of, like I said, this rest or digest state. And I think even especially one of the biggest culprits right now, I think, is artificial light. Because we're surrounded. It's like it's totally disrupted. Our circadian rhythms based on the cycle of light and dark. So, like I said, based on this research from Sachin Panda, it's like once you disrupt that circadian rhythm, then that's already like a stress on the system. And then another, probably the second biggest disruptor right now, it has to be cell phones and social media. It's like just getting like the constant notifications on your phone. And again, like this bring us back to like that mindfulness training and like that concept of mindfulness, because based on like uh, my experience, like through training and stuff like that, I've been able to start to recognize some of this kind of stuff like in myself. And so already like a while back, like I turned off all the notifications like on my phone. And like I said, even like I'll catch myself where you see like people constantly like nonstop, like looking at their screen. And like even I'll catch myself where it's like I'll be standing like waiting for an elevator or something, and I'll have like the that initial urge to like reach in my pocket and pull out my phone and kind of check it, see what's going on. And so I resist that urge, like specifically because um that but the thing of it is like actually that takes like that little bit of like effort to have to kind of like check yourself. And so my next step is I think I'm gonna probably like 3 days a week. I'm just gonna leave my phone at home like when I leave the house and just do like a digital fast, which I already started doing here at the house, where it's like I started putting in like a digital curfew. So like everyone has to get off their device at 10 p.m. and stop looking at screens. And ideally, I'm gonna ratchet that back like a little bit earlier, but because of that disruption from the blue light like shining in your eyes, but also because it's like that constant like little ping of like stress of like seeing like a notification. And now they're talking about like the fear of missing out that people are experiencing, so like they're compelled to check their cell phone like every 30 seconds or whatever and get that little hit of dopamine. So we have like a lot of things, like a lot of inputs that are coming, and there's a lot of us, there's financial stress and family stress and all these kind of like sort of unnatural living environment, basically, that is constantly got our nervous system tuned up into a sympathetic state all the time. And so this is again where the value of like a very simple, like basic practice, even just like a very simple like breathing exercise that can help like bring us back to more of that parasympathetic state. Um, but yeah, so I thought it was this was kind of a good study to kind of bring the direction I thought of the show back to some of the other things that you and I are into, which is like I said, mindfulness, meditation, and qigong. So speaking of qigong, you gonna make a trip to Saskatoon anytime soon?
I would like to. We'll or not. I really need to sometime soon. I was actually with the whole phone thing. I was like, she is kind of setting an example for me because she doesn't own a computer. She runs her entire all three businesses from her phone, and she's like never on the thing. Uh,
Right,
she turns it off when she goes to sleep. When she was finishing up the qigong workshop in Thailand, she was like, I was got tired of the notifications, so I just tuned out everyone. I needed a break from social media, and I wanted to finish out my vacation, just enjoying Thailand. You know, what a novel thought that
right,
you can go on vacation and not document. And even when she was there, she I mean, she talked to me some, but it would be like in the morning, okay, I'm off to class, and then she'd post a whatever on her Instagram, and that was it. Like she was dark
right,
for most of the month. And I was kind of thinking like the whole dopamine response is like, okay, YouTube is made it difficult. And I'm like, like I keep listening to Roberto say, look, man, just make content. Don't worry about numbers. Don't check stats. Don't do anything. And it's like, I'll get bored. Oh, let me see how many views am I getting? What's my watch time looking like? How many comments did I get? And I think part of it is where I work because I literally sit there and I'm at my desk and my phone is here. And it's like, well, I can't get up. So that's been like weighing on me a lot. Is it's like I see what everybody else is doing. They're all, oh girl, did you see what Nicki Minaj posted on Instagram? And then there's the conversation. It's like none of these people have any impact on your life. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm checking my feed and what's going on in my feed. And I'm like in my mind, I'm like, why are you here? Like I would be off training Ely Chin or working on a form or something, and I would not be checking my phone because I'm creating, right? I'm active, or maybe I just start talking to somebody on the street, even though I'm introverted as heck. I still am a Southerner and have that Southern hospitality thing where we can't walk by anybody without saying, "Hey, how you doing today?
right,
How y'all doing?" So I'm really this whole idea of disconnecting and everything is like I literally want to disconnect.
right,
And even though I might run a business online and have online presence, it's like that doesn't have to be everything that I do. And making that trip to Saskatoon would help a lot because
yeah.
that's part of the reason I'm checking my phone so much a lot of the time.
Well, and speaking of which, is who's really bad about is Instagram, because like I guess apparently they drip feed you your likes. So like let's say like you post something and it gets like 25 likes, they'll only show you five,
Yeah.
and then they hold on to like the next ones, and then they'll release like five more so that you see the notification on, if you have your notifications turned on, that you see like, oh, I got five more notifications from Instagram. Let me go back and check and see. so that basically like they're tapping into that phenomenon and exacerbating it. So yeah, that's why, like I said, I turn all mine off so that I don't even have to, when I have downtime or whatever, it's like I check, but I'm not constantly like, because I started to get to the point where, especially like for email,
Mhm.
like when I would see like email notifications, I would start to like, I really noticed like I was having like a stress response from just like seeing the notification. So I turned it all off and I check it a couple times a day. As I have, like free time or whatever. But I'm not like chasing after the notifications anymore.
Yeah, I a big part of me is wanting to like take email off my phone. One of the lesson that I'm stuck on in the online trainer academy is like setting up your Gmail inbox, and then setting your calendar or your schedule where like, okay, this hour all I'm doing is just reading emails and like responding as necessary, only when it's like business related. Client email responses, then that's a different day, a different time where it's like, okay, like I'm only responding to emails on these days, this time. So you email me during the week, but if it's not an emergency, you're not going to get a response back until this time when I sit down. And I'm like, well, I'm not there yet where I have clients emailing me and this and that. But even still, like you get the email things to your phone, and I'm like, well, if you're out, it's real easy to read it and respond if you have to. It's like that's part of work. It's just like uh I don't I don't have my work email on my phone. I can only respond when I'm at the office, when I'm not doing other stuff. Now, I mean, some of the higher up people, they do because they have to. I mean, at that point, if there's any emergency, you have to respond. So they're a little bit different, but that's the nature of the job that they do, and I don't have any intentions of doing that job
Right.
or reaching that point. That's not something I want to do. So
Right. Yeah. Uh, so I think that's going to do it for this week's episode. I covered all the material that I wanted to cover. Did you have anything that you wanted to follow up with?
no, just I'm kind of I'm not happy that the weather's cooled off, but it means it's not 100 degrees in my attic, which means I can actually go up there and enjoy working. So I'm hoping my schedule frees up in 2 weeks from now so that I can one get more active on my YouTube channel, uh, get more of the exercise workout stuff posted on my other channel because I've got footage going back to July that I've never posted or done anything with. And then I've been trying to write this ebook on like a Steve Rogers Captain America inspired workout. Some of that is from just stuff that I've come up with, and then listening to interviews with what's his name, Chris Evans, his actual trainer. So like he talks about what supplements he took and the kind of workouts. So I wanted to like make something easy where people like Captain America, here's my take on how you could train like him with kettlebells. And then putting together like actual group program where it's, hey, this is a little bit higher tiered. You'll get coaching and access to me, which means you're gonna pay. The ebook will be free, and I wanted to have all that out by the end of the month, but I don't know if I'm gonna have time. So uh, before by Thanksgiving, I want to have. I'm not even say by Thanksgiving. By probably November, the middle of November, I want to have all of that done because I should have time once November 3rd is come and gone.
All right.
So yeah, I'm saying it here because now I said it. There's social proof, so now I got to do it.
Yeah, now you're committed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on a short PDF as well. It's like going to be my ultimate good sleep guide. So if you're having trouble falling asleep or getting good sleep and being rested, that's going to be ready. Hopefully, I don't know, I'm hoping to have it finished being written by next week, and then it'll probably take me a little bit longer to get the actual like PDF and some of the illustrations and stuff put in. But it's going to cover, both some breathing and relaxation techniques, and it's going to cover some like nutritional guidelines and as well as some other things that are part of the framework that I've been working on for the last couple of years. So be keep an eye out for that. And then also like my coaching program will be on pre-sale starting at the end of the month, and that'll go on pre-sale between now and or between the end of this month and November 28th. And at that point, I'll be opening up my coaching program to the general public. So that'll be fun. And as always, if you guys wanted to uh, follow up on anything from this episode, we'll have links in the video description below. And of course, you can also find links to follow both Prince and I on social media. I want to thank everybody for who joined us for the live stream today and dropped us some comments in the chat box. We appreciate that. And yeah, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode. So as always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next week.